So, what the hell is this video? Now, I saw other couple streamers post their thumbnails and specifically reacting to this video, and I didn't see any of the video. And a lot of their thumbnails say this video is super crazy and insane. So I just wanted to see what was going on with this video, what is going on, and see if I could critique it, see if this video is actually insane or if they bring up some decent points. Because if you know, a lot of people might call me in a social justice warrior just for being a socialist, just for being a lefty. So let's see if I disagree with whatever this person says. It's a long ass video, so let's get started.
The United States had one of the very few rebellions in its history. 6 blocks of downtown Seattle formed an anarchist state that declared independence from the United States.
Did he just say an anarchist state? Isn't the definition of anarchy to not have a state? So how can you be an anarchist and be pro-state? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
States of America.
Oh man, we're 10 minutes in and already have problems.
Last summer, the United States had one of the very few rebellions in its history. 6 blocks of downtown Seattle formed an anarchist state that declared independence from the United States of America. They fought with the authorities alongside demanding the abolition of the police in general. Roving bands of protesters looted the city.
Some people, that is something that, depending on who you talk to, different views people have on that. Because me personally, I don't want to abolish the police. I definitely want to grab a lot of their money and their resources and put it into something else, something like social workers and other stuff like that to help up and bring up social workers, so police officers don't get called for literally every fucking thing. But then there are other people that just completely want to abolish police. So it just depends on who you talk to.
Their utopian state literally collapsed into a dictatorship run by a SoundCloud rapper in the first couple hours, and they ran out of food within the first day. At the same time, erecting literal shrines to George Floyd. Shockingly, the reason it survived so long was that they were supported by the mayor of Seattle, who refused to evict the rebels. Left-wing media, in turn...
A lot of, he's not... His rhetoric is really bad, because when it comes to like the mayor, and when mayors do that, a lot of mayors would just let like the protesters just be, because a lot of the times the protests would just peacefully just leave, you know, and just by itself normally. So he was like, okay, we just give them time, because over time, slowly, well, not slowly, but fast over time, they're just gonna scatter again, and it's gonna be, you know, it'll be a lot easier for that to happen than setting in the police to take care of everything. And probably setting in the police will probably antagonize the protesters some more, and the protesters will get more energized and more aggravated, because police, of course, being pigs, will probably do some bullshit against the protesters.
Reported this case in a very skewed way, describing the revolt as like a block party or peaceful protests. Some of my friends in Canada and Europe say it was barely even reported over there. This was complemented by riots across the country.
Why would a city riot / protest be covered in Europe and in Canada? Wouldn't it just be like an American? This is like an American city, and it's not even that big, or what's happening there's not even really that big. Why would you know, Europe cover it? I don't understand there.
I'm sure lots of people have similar stories, but my friends in Philadelphia saw people use dynamite to blow up ATMs, widespread looting, fires, and breaking cars in wealthy downtown areas.
Anecdotes Andy right here.
One of my friends from Richmond, Virginia told me that their police station was burned down, as well as literal buses in the street. These riots and rebellions, which were largely supported and never denounced by the mainstream left-wing media, were based around the murder of a single black man in Minnesota. What provoked an otherwise rational society to behave in this manner? That's the question of this video.
Oh no. It looks like so far he's not really understanding social justice.
This video is meant to be a breakdown of the social justice movement, pulling on my knowledge of history, philosophy, religion, and just thinking rationally. How did the movement start? What's its underlying psychology, rationale, and where I think it's going? You're going to start to see my political opinions, and even though I'm center-right, I wanted this video to be rooted in common sense and values that all reasonable people from different cultures or political beliefs could agree with. Before we get started, I want to set up several definitions and tell you where I'm coming from. The first of which is that social justice is a very difficult movement to define, as we'll see, because it goes across many different parts of the left in many different fields. But I define social justice as a group whose identity is primarily built around...
So if your movement is built around ending class oppression, you're a communist. If you're based around ending cultural oppression, you're social justice. I mean, not really. Just because you're there feels like there's more of that, because socialists also want to end class oppression.
Fighting oppressive structures. And as an example of that, not all environmentalists are part of the social justice movement. Not all socialists are part of the social justice movement. But the social justice movement has many people who are part of the environmentalist and socialist movement. So I'd say most environmentalists in Western countries are allied with the social justice movement. As another example, I would say President Biden and center-left groups like the New York Times aren't explicitly social justice. They're more center-left, but oftentimes they have lots of social justice people in their alliances, and so end up becoming beholden to them. At the same time, I don't stand against anyone who's trying to do genuine good and deal with legitimate oppression, where I would say the movement to get gay rights or the civil rights movement are both good, but I think these people come from a very different tradition than modern social justice, where Martin Luther King, for example, drew from the American tradition of us all being equal before the law and...
Oh my god, I can't believe he's doing this. Moral character really doesn't exist. Too weak and only judge people by the skin tone. No, that's not what people are saying. Well, people agree with Martin Luther King, and he's doing the same bullshit that fucking Steven Crowder did when Steven Crowder did his Martin Luther King Day video that I talked about. All these people who are against the quote-unquote woke left and fucking quote-unquote social justice would be against Martin Luther King Jr. And Martin Luther King Jr. would be pro-social justice and pro-woke left. If you actually read fucking Martin Luther King Jr., if you ever actually listen to his speech and read some of his writings, he would absolutely agree with us, and we're just following in his footsteps. So, of course, he probably does not understand that at all.
God. But these modern social justice people come from a Marxist tradition that tries to tear down the successful rather than pull up the downtrodden. At the same time, I don't think the right is blameless, and the right has done bad stuff in the last 2 years, but an ill done on the right doesn't justify an ill on the left. Also, for those of you who are going to say this is a biased rant with no respect,
I would say a group of people going down to the Capitol building to destroy democracy for the whole country is worse than having a police station burned down, because you can build other police stations. Once you destroy democracy, it's very hard to get that shit back. So the Capitol 6 riots is way worse than anything BLM has ever done.
Research. I've actually done a tremendous amount of study from all perspectives to get to this video essay. I've read anti-social justice pundits, as well as taking a course in gender studies, reading foundational texts of social justice, while also reading the philosophic and historical context like I always do with these videos. I've spent years in social justice-dominated educational institutions, and so I know their arguments inside out. A lot of people don't know how far this movement's gotten, so I'm going to give some examples. For one, the Biden administration has referred to women as birthing people because saying mothers might be transphobic. The Canadian government passed a bill making it illegal not to use someone's preferred pronouns.
I don't know anything about this one, but this one, Bill C-16. Oh, I know a lot about this one specifically because this is the shit that Jordan Peterson had lied about, and the reason why Jordan Peterson got big. And this guy is currently lying about Bill 16. So Bill C-16 in Canada just puts transgender people in the same category like as racially discriminated at like other people when it comes to their their employers. So if your boss comes around and you tell them, "Oh, I'm not a guy anymore. I'm a woman. I named Cindy," and he was like, "Oh no, you're not. You're a man. You're named Bill. Shut the fuck up, Bill. You're Bill. You're a man. Stop trying to believe that you're a woman." Now that person, the boss will go to jail, or I forget which specifically, or will go to jail, or would like be sued by the other person, because because the boss is specifically misgendering that person and causing harm to the transgender person. So they just bring it underneath the camp, just like if a black or brown person goes into a job and their boss starts calling them racial slurs and stuff like that, and just being discriminated against them. That's the real reason for this guy is specifically lying about this situation right here. What a liar, dude. What a weaselly little liar, dude. Okay, so yep, this guy's already lying over here, so this cannot be good.
The government passed a bill making it illegal not to use someone's preferred pronouns. The Guardian posts articles saying hating men is okay. CNN supports reparations for slavery, something most black people don't support. For the next...
Okay, but what's really wrong with reparations against slavery? It's not really anything bad. You're just giving some black people money. It's just confusing when it comes to reparations, because it needs to boil down to who gets what money and how much money do they get and stuff like that. But how's giving reparations to for black people like the same as hating men? Okay.
Next round of Oscars, they have quotas on how many people from oppressed groups you have to have on the staff of your movie in order to be eligible. These are all moderate left-wing places as well. I could go on and on with stories like this. In just my personal life, for example, how there were protests in the college I went to when the college Republican club tweeted out, "Vote for Trump," or my high school replaced a yearly study of foreign...
So, again, I don't understand why he's so mad about this. I thought we're all pro freedom of speech. Isn't your freedom of speech whenever you say something... whenever you hear somebody say, "Oh, vote for Trump," and then you get mad at that person and start like calling him out, isn't that like freedom of speech?
Country Week with Social Justice Week. Alternatively, the only real demographic that really twists my words unfairly and tries to destroy me, especially on Reddit, is these leftists. My friends in the finance, entertainment, and tech industries say a significant minority, if not a majority of firms, just aren't hiring white men anymore, going entirely for diversity hiring. I hate it when people say social justice is just a marginal movement.
Oh man, I know that's anecdotal, but it's like one of those things I hear a lot of the times. It's like when it comes to like doctors and stuff like that, I heard that before. It's like, oh, a lot of these black doctors are really bad just because they get hired just because they're because of diversity training. And it's like, how do you know that specifically, that they're being hired just because of diversity? Maybe they're just like really good doctors. Like, why do you automatically see a person of color or marginalized group, a person being in a higher place where a lot of white people are, and automatically assume they're doing that because of diversity?
That it's confined to campus as an ivory tower of fools, or that it's not that radical. Both of these are normally what moderate left-wingers say to apologize for it in the same way moderate right-wingers do for extreme nationalists or normal people do for their delinquent cousins. The truth is that this is an ideology that controls much of the entertainment, media, and education worlds on almost every level, and a larger and larger share of the political and corporate worlds. How did we get here, though? Social justice is a very organic philosophy in that, unlike Marxism or Christianity, there was no one prophet who set the philosophy out, but instead it kind of just formed from a bunch of different roots and bumped around universities in the 1990s until it became really public after the 2008 financial crash, quickly amassing influence over all of society. People often roast Jordan Peterson for saying social justice formed as cultural postmodern Marxism, but that's historically accurate. If you wanted to find the place where the balls
When I say like hear someone saying post-Marxist shit like that, that's usually Nazis made that up, and Nazi is pretty much a Nazi dog whistle. I don't think Jordan Peterson is a Nazi, because I think he's just an idiot, And this guy, I don't think he's a Nazi either. I think he's just an idiot as well.
Started ruling that eventually resulted in social justice, it would be with the disenchantment with traditional Marxism that came during and after World War II. Once leftists realized that Marxism had failed on every single level imaginable by not reaching a utopia, being poorer than capitalism, killing tens of millions of people, and not even attracting the working classes, leftists had to
What would he say?
every that came during and after World War II. Once leftists realized that Marxism had failed on every single level imaginable by not reaching a utopia, being poorer than capitalism, killing tens of millions of people.
I would like to say Marxism, when it comes to the workers owning the means of production, what I want, hasn't been done, not really, in the world ever. And he acts like capitalism hasn't killed like a lot of people as well. So I think that's pretty funny.
People, and not even attracting the working classes, leftists had to find a new story in order to retain their core beliefs. You know those weird cults that build their entire worldview around the world ending? Normally what happens when the world doesn't end is that those cults fracture and make some minor edits to why their overall story wasn't working. Why the world would actually end 10 years later, or why the world didn't end because blank conditions weren't met. That's what happens here as well with communism. The Frankfurt School believed that the bourgeoisie constructed culture, and so the revolution could only take place once the previous culture had been deconstructed enough that the working classes realized that it was inside their true interests to be communists. The emphasis switched from the working classes to women and ethnic minorities as those groups rose to greater social predominance. Likewise, another branch of former communists in France founded the postmodern movement, which some of my really smart friends tell me.
Oh no, it's this. Oh, he hates postmodern. Oh, a lot of these reactionaries always hate postmodern art, like, because of course they don't know what the fuck art is and shit.
Actually has deep philosophic merit, but from my perspective largely translates to everything's a social construct for power and there should be no broader stories. Postmodernism doesn't believe in any broader theories of the world, but the logic that developed was something like, if broader stories are wrong, we can create a story which is about opposing other people's oppressive stories, which hold down oppressed groups. This sort of view became more popular in academia in the 1990s as the baby boomers, who were significantly more left-wing than their parents, took over academia. As the baby boomers gained power...
Are baby boomers more left-wing than everybody else? I don't even know that's true, but maybe that is true because I know like by every generation going down, every generation becomes more left-wing than the previous generation. So maybe that's true.
Our academic departments went from being around 3/4 left-wing to 19/20ths, which resulted in an echo chamber in which pandering to one's own faction was the way to get ahead. As the boomers entered academia, you saw the development of various departments like women's, race, postcolonial, and queer studies, which largely existed as ideological laboratories for the movement that would develop. Social justice theory developed with all departments.
Oh no, Karl Marx, like, bro, like, I don't understand why a lot of these fucking reactionaries think that every single fucking college loves Karl Marx, loves communism, loves, I think that's Ming from the China, and like actually has all of this shit. Because when you go to an actual college, a lot of the colleges are liberal, a lot of colleges are still like super capitalist. So I don't these guys are over here, big brains over here.
It's like women's, race, postcolonial.
This is real. Right here, this is real art to them.
Queer studies, which largely existed as ideological laboratories for the movement that would develop. Social justice theory developed with all these various departments working together in a common ideological coalition. We'll go through these later, but a lot of the inconsistencies that came from social justice theory derive from how it was a series of unrelated academic departments that were allied in a common ideological cause. Let me give an example. It's why it's acceptable to change between genders but not between races. A cornerstone of social justice theory is that...
Well, maybe because when you change between a lot of people out there, when it comes to like the transgender people, a lot of them actually, and if they don't change their own genders, a lot of them actually like are very depressed, and a lot of them end up committing suicide and stuff like that. That's doesn't happen for race at all at the moment of that we know of right now. So that's why it's more acceptable gender than race.
That oppressive identities are fake and should be deconstructed as a moral good in of themselves, while subjugated identities are real, since they pull on the supposedly real or subjective experiences of the oppressed. Thus, for a white person to become a black person is evil, since it infringes upon the black person's positive identity. Meanwhile, for a man to become a woman is
White silence is a lot of these people are probably fucking white supremacists. A lot of them probably are.
good, since it breaks down the oppressive structure of gender, even though in real terms the biological differences between the sexes are far greater than those between the races. Another version of this is that the feminist movement is in contradiction with the trans movement.
Well, he says that like a lot of left-leaning people are not trying to tear down gender like we're trying to tear down race like we're not trying to tear down gender. A lot like gender and fucking race are socially constructive, and a lot of and people in general would be better off without both of those things. So I like how he tries to act like we're not fighting against both of those things.
In that, if gender doesn't exist and is oppressive, then women's separate identity as women, which is biologically ingrained, carries no value. This is the root of the anti-trans feminist faction called TERFs. The thing that really elevated social justice into the public consciousness as an important ideology was the process of growing social tensions that I've talked about in these videos, largely driven by a combination of population growth and globalization. This meant the standard of living has in real terms gone down in Western countries for the last 50 years, which when paired with growing inequality caused an immense amount of social tension.
Is he going to blame this on capitalism? Because is his capitalism fault? Or is he going to blame it on brown people and people of color and like the transgenders? That's the reason why people are less happy now than they were before,
which created political polarization. This is really plain to see in that all the social justice keywords skyrocketed from complete obscurity to the public view with the failure of the Occupy Wall Street movement, which came shortly after the 2008 financial crash. The 2008 crash resulted in a rapid decline in standard of living, and like every other similar era,
I like how he's trying to blame a lot of left-leaning people for like percentage of annual number on New York Times articles mentioning whiteness. Like what kind of graph is this? Like what is this supposed to prove? That just New York Times is the end all be all of, you know, just mentioning whiteness and shit like that? Wouldn't a lot of why did he begin at 1980s? Why wouldn't you begin like before the 60s when, you know, we had Jim Crow laws, when whiteness was way more integral? Being white is way more integral in being in society than it is now. Because if you're white, you can go like pretty much everywhere you want. If you weren't white, you can only go to certain places at a time. So this graph makes zero sense. Because maybe New York Times is like the only articles that are mentioning whiteness a lot. What about every other article the whiteness has gone down? Like what kind of graph is this? What?
The 2008 crash resulted in a rapid decline in standard of living, and like every other similar era of history,
Here's our graph. See? Good was up when I liked the past, and bad went up when I don't like present. Therefore, I'm right.
people fell into extremist ideologies that looked for scapegoats. In a system which seemed biased towards privileged white males, for example, with bailing out the banks, well, the economy fell apart, it looked reasonable. At the same time, the internet made populist movements like social justice easier to form. The internet made populism of both right and left-wing varieties more powerful, and we definitely see this with social justice, a movement promulgated and advanced collectively through the internet rather than through more mainstream top-down political ideology.
What the fuck? What is he even saying? I think he's just saying a bunch of fucking word salad right now. I don't even think he's even saying anything at all.
At the same time, the internet made populist movements like social justice easier to form. The internet made populism of both right and left-wing varieties more powerful, and we definitely see this with social justice, a movement promulgated and advanced collectively through the internet rather than through more.
I like how he puts up Swift is over 18 likes, 23 likes, and then he has 403 likes, which is decent, and this one, Lord Lee, is finally, which has decent. So two of these fucking tweets, like, no one liked. 23 likes, that's nothing. 18 likes, that's literally nothing. Okay. And what does these tweets even have like to do with his point?
More mainstream top-down political ideologies. I always wondered why social justice behaved in such a strategically irrational way. I mean, this is a movement that literally shits on its own followers as terrible people, and
Some examples of social justice being strategically inept. It targets masculinity as toxic, even though masculinity is the main force you need to pull on to seize and maintain power. Wait, no, it's not. What the fuck? A lot of toxic masculinity is that men. A lot of one thing of toxic masculinity is that men, we can't be emotional, So that's one thing of toxic masculinity that we need to get rid of because it hurts men. Another thing, a lot of these fucking reactionaries and like the men's right activists are like, oh, when women, when we go to court and we're trying to get custody of the children, the courts always lean towards the woman getting like all the custody of the children. Well, because it's toxic masculinity. Because toxic masculinity says that women are better caretakers of children, and the guy should barely be involved in the children's growth. They just should go out, get a job, and make the money, and that's it. That's another thing of toxic masculinity that we're going against. So okay. Whatever a white or straight person does, they're evil, as explained later, which brings them very little incisive to the movement, which is not true at all. I don't understand. What does this mean? This is so broad. Can you give me point? It says you'll explain it later, so we'll go in later. But this is super, super broad. Like, I don't. What can you give me some points, please? The movement is predicted upon real-world goals that are unachievable, complete inequality rather than inner or oral compass. So you think that just because. So we want people to have as much equality as possible, have people to be as happy as possible, but but since it's never achievable, we just can't, you shouldn't just go for that goal since it's unachievable. Which say, does anybody feel like it's harder to get a big difference? Okay, it pushes hardest for the smallest group. There are more Salvadorian Americans and transgender people. However, they're giving presence, and I could go on. Well, it's because Salvador, maybe because transgender people are being discriminated against a lot in America, and Salvadorians they fall under Hispanic and Latinos. So, I mean, it's just like two different like discrimination right here. So maybe it feels like their transgender people are getting preferences. However, Salvadorians are doing too well because I'm Hispanic as well. We're being discriminated against, but yeah, it's just like it's weird.
Actively looks for the most powerful and largest groups in society and says they're evil. But I didn't realize that this is primarily a mob-driven movement, not one that's controlled top-down. When I say social justice is irrational, I'm not being biased. I'm stating a literal fact of its philosophy that even its founders would agree with. Like some right-wing parody of left-wingers, they believe that logic and objective reality are Western constructions. They take the postmodernist argument that all ways of knowing are social constructions and combine it with the Marxist viewpoint that all culture can be explained as a struggle between the oppressor and the oppressed. The Smithsonian, or the most important government-owned museum system in America, released this chart of whiteness, which went about describing...
No one liked this. Even left-leaning people don't like this group. This feels like more of a radical liberal thing than a leftist Marxist thing, because no one liked this. No one left-leaning, super left-leaning liked this shit.
Whiteness with characteristics like hard work, being on time, or rational objective thinking. The first problem is that these are just objectively good things, and that societies that work hard automatically crush those that are lazy and are wealthier, but also that these aren't white either. The Celts in Britain at the birth of Christ had a value system that didn't value hard work or objectivity, and they're equally white. Meanwhile, the Muslim world used to be on the cutting edge of science. Similarly, if you go to a university STEM class in North America today, most of the students will be Asian. The most punctual, hardworking people in the world today are in Asia. Science
Maybe because all the rich people all the immigrants, like when it comes to Asian people that come over here, their family are also are more wealthy because you won't have like the poorest of the poor of Chinese people or even average Chinese people coming over here because they're too poor to come over here. So of course we're gonna have the richest families coming over to America, and they're gonna start working harder because they're rich, they have more access to stuff.
Obviously isn't a Western way of knowing, since other cultures are wholeheartedly embracing a scientific worldview since it can be objectively proven. Ask an educated Indian if they support the oppressive Western way of scientific knowing or their traditional magic systems, which, by the way, all races used to believe in. They'd say science without a thought. This all ends up being a backwards form of racism that exists to assuage the guilt of smug liberals at the expense of actually oppressed groups. Look at rap culture, in which modern culture literally encourages antisocial traits.
So I think it's really telling that Aziz Ansari was canceled for having bad sex while the baby was going got away for killing a guy. Chris Brown was beating his girlfriend. Gosh, okay, so Chris Brown was family beating his girlfriend was really bad. I don't understand. Yeah, he should be canceled. Kashi 6 9 feel good. Okay, but the baby was got away from killing a guy. He didn't get away from killing a guy. All right, the guy pulled out a gun to the baby, and the baby was defending himself. All right. So I thought there was America. I thought we were pro self-defense. I thought we were pro gun. Apparently this guy isn't.
Rates like crime, drug usage, or broken families in the African American community, since to judge it would.
Wait, so what do you say over here?
To assuage the guilt of smug liberals at the expense of actually oppressed groups. Look at rap culture, in which modern culture literally encourages antisocial traits like crime, drug usage, or broken families in the African American community.
You can tell this guy is like super fucking white. When it comes to like rap culture and stuff like that, the reason why they talk a lot about that stuff, and it is bad, but the reason why is because that's when they grow up, that's all they see around them because of like capitalism, because of other stuff, because they push a lot of poor people and a lot of poor people of color into bad places and not giving them like that many options to get out. So when they talk about that in hip hop, it's because they rap and they talk about stuff that they know, and that's all they know.
Since to judge it would be racism. However, this has really negative effects on the Black community. We should be supporting the productive elements of the African American community, not the most antisocial. Alternatively, look at West Coast cities like Vancouver.
Like what? What is the positives of like the Black community? Did he just? Oh yeah, we should appreciate the positives of the Black community. Okay, like what? Give me positives. He won't be able to say anything.
American community, not the most antisocial. Alternatively, look at West Coast cities like Vancouver or Los Angeles that have horrifying drug and homelessness problems, largely caused by the lack of an ability to judge on the part of a morally handicapped elite.
Hey, you know why? The West Coast has, and like LA has, a really bad homeless problem. It's because of Republicans, because of Ronald fucking Reagan. All right. That's the reason why it's really bad. It has a really bad problem. And I would say that the liberals that come up after Ronald Reagan could fix this and could have fixed this, but the problem was created by Republicans. So, okay.
The city of Vancouver had a policy of not judging homelessness and drug usage, with their only real policy being having clean, government-controlled sites to shoot heroin in. I was staying in downtown Los Angeles last week, and the homelessness crisis had made an otherwise wealthy and cool area into a deeply unpleasant and nearly uninhabitable place with the sheer amount of crazy homeless guys. However, mental illness and drug abuse is when people aren't in their right minds, and considering that Western societies had practically none of either 60 years ago, means that this is a pretty easily solvable problem. These addicted people and their families, whose lives they've often really hurt or ruined, would probably in the long view be thankful for a government that doesn't act like a smug, negligent parent. At its heart, social justice is a poorly constructed religion more than anything else. Just look at its main text today, like How to Be an Anti-Racist and White Fragility, which—
Are these the main text? Do every social justice person read this? I have never read this. I don't know anybody who has read this. How to Be an Anti-Racist. I don't know anybody who reads this. So are these like our Bibles? Do we follow this? I don't even know who. Okay, I kind of know who Raman Angelo is, but I don't know who Ibran X Kennedy is. I don't even know who he is. Okay.
Boil down to an idea of original sin in which white people must admit they are always racist no matter what they do, and nearly every action a white person does is inherently racist due to the racist structure of society. Nowhere action a
Wait, what
white
do you say?
people must admit they are always racist no matter what of original sin in which white people must admit they are always racist no matter what they do, and nearly every action a white person does is inherently racist due to the racist structure of society.
No, that's not true. That's not true. When it comes to like white people, whatever they fucking they're inherently racist. No, that's not true. No, no, barely anybody believes this. Only like the fucking rad libs who I don't like believes that. And even them, I don't even know if they actually even believed it. But the books talk about if you are a white person, you're living in a white supremacist country and white supremacist ideal that will help you, like that will help you a lot more than it'll help other people. So you should just fight against that as much as possible. Not because you're like not because you're inherently racist, it's because you try to make equality for everybody.
Nowhere are actual steps to deal with racial iniquities in the real world proposed. The cardinal flaw of the modern world, which our descendants will just facepalm continually, is our
Authoritarianism is always cool among intellectuals since it allows them to imagine themselves in power where they should be able to make their superiors use their superior intelligence. Now, only tankies like Stalin. I don't like Stalin. I don't like Russia. I don't like China. I don't like them at all. I don't even know if they're not even like left leaning, because they actually like, if you actually really read into the beliefs of Stalin, he was very right leaning. He didn't like gay people. He didn't actually help any of the workers at all. So he was way more right leaning than anything else. He was racist as well. So okay.
The cardinal flaw of the modern world, which our descendants will just facepalm continually, is our arrogance and overestimating human abilities. All the cool philosophies that developed since the Industrial Revolution, such as communism, fascism, and the various fads that have passed, all failed since they acted as humans, and especially humans in positions of power, are capable of doing everything. This is...
God, he's putting out a lot of shit. A reference to okay. I don't even know. I don't even want to read all of that.
Social justice philosophy, which believes that human nature is inherently changeable and all disparities can be solved. A great example of this comes with disparities, in which social justice philosophy believes that if there's any disparity, it must be the consequence of oppression.
So wait, hold up.
This is a critical flaw in social justice philosophy, which believes that human nature is inherently changeable and all disparities can be solved. A great example...
So what do you think, what do you think is human nature? Do you think it's human nature for white people to be racist against everybody else? Because that's what these social justice people are trying to I'll say get rid of, but like get rid of that from society, racism and stuff. And then you're arguing that they're trying to change people's like fundamental things about them. So do you think white people are actually inherently racist? Colonialism was already the richest area in the world before starting colonialism. Okay, and they still did colonialism. The end of colonialism followed by massive economic growth in Europe and stagnation in its former colonies. The Asian world has far larger empires than those of Europe for the first few centuries, yet they were poorer. Wealthiest European states like Germany, Scandinavia were often with no colonies, and the poor like Portugal and Spain were those the biggest colonial assets. What is he trying to say here? Is he trying to say that Europe and white people are like better than everybody else? Is that what he's trying to say? I don't know. I'm confused with what he's putting this here. Britain, okay.
Comes with disparities, in which social justice philosophy believes that if there's any disparity, it must be the consequence of...
Oh, no colonies in 19th century. High point of colonialism turned to profit. I mean, there's still colonialism is still happening today. We talked about Africa and China.
Disparities are the norm across almost every field you can think of. For example, every single one of the 20 tallest men...
Hey, maybe it's because the reason why a lot of Asian people wealth is higher than a lot of white people is because only the rich Asian people can afford to come over here. So of course they're already going to start off being rich.
In the world is in Asia. Or alternatively, the Germans ended up being the top piano manufacturers for all of history. The idea that oppression is the cause of almost every social factor is silly when you look at the horrifically legally repressed Chinese in Indonesia, who own 71% of the country's economy, while also only being 3% of the population. In short, you can't find a single statistic that isn't incredibly power law distributed. Take the gender pay gap, in which the average woman makes 76 cents for the average man, which has effectively been the rallying cry for the modern feminist movement. However, once you account for children, women actually make more money. Likewise, once
But what if they wait? What? When you count the children, what if the woman doesn't have any children? So it's just like, oh, fuck you. You're gonna make less money just because you don't have children. Fuck you. Go out and have some children. Then you'll be able to make enough to have children. You have to have children in order to make more money. You have to have, like, no. If a woman doesn't want to have kids, then she should still make as much money as guys. So what kind of argument is this?
Experience and hours worked is accounted for, you find it shrinks to 96 cents for every dollar. Social justice believes all hierarchies are inherently oppressive, and hierarchies based on actual skills and ability are all evil. An example of this is that when Western businesses go to third world countries and pay workers there wages lower than first world countries, it's called oppressive. These companies almost always pay higher wages than the local economy does, and are paying the wages that are allowed at the lower productivity levels in the third world. Yet another example.
Well, even if they are paying the workers there a higher level than everything else, that's still no reason to treat them like garbage. Maybe we should have the companies force them to actually like treat their workers a lot better.
Example is how social justice treats the natural hierarchies like teacher and student or parent and child as oppressive. Modern left-wing doctrine says teachers should defer to what students want as much as possible, and parents should listen to their child's whims, even when in most circumstances the parents and teachers are wiser and not letting them teach.
Wait, I never heard that. Wait, I never heard the first one.
Should defer to what students want as much as possible, and parents.
I never heard that before. What?
Their child's whims, even when in most circumstances.
Okay, so when people talk about like hearing your child's whims, it doesn't mean that you should hear the child's whims and whatever your child want, go ahead and get whatever your fucking child wants. No, it's talking about just listen to your child, see what is like angering them, and then you can like fix it. But by fixing it doesn't mean like you automatically have to say yes to whatever the fuck they want. Maybe fixing it is telling them no and like doing something else with when it comes to like parenting and stuff like that.
Circumstances, the parents and teachers are wiser, and not letting them teach their pupils makes those pupils worse off. Letting your child or student do.
And again, I've been talking about this a lot in my channels. The people who are telling teachers to not teach their children, to teach their students, are right wingers. Right now, they're telling them, oh, you can't talk about Martin Luther King Jr. That's CRT. You can't talk about slavery. You can't talk about Jim Crow. That's all critical race theory. You know, you're gonna make the white kids feel bad about themselves. You know, and it's gonna give them white guilt. You know, and it's gonna actually like be illegal in some states to actually make white children feel guilty about like the past, even though it's just talking about American history and it's not even the white kids' past. Okay, I love the way he's twisting all of this.
Whatever they want is actively harming them in the long term, since it isn't enforcing discipline, so they can't internalize the self-control that would allow them to thrive and hold society together. However, social justice doesn't believe in real knowledge, love, or hierarchies of skill.
Oh, there you go. Critical theory, does he even know what critical race theory is? I guarantee he probably doesn't.
The only force in the world being cynical power games. Think of how many schools don't teach real historical dates, for example, which means no real history actually ends up getting taught. Or how many...
Hey, maybe that's the reason. Maybe because that's Republicans' fault, you know, because a lot of books, like in my classroom, I had to get like fucking McGraw-Hill and shit like that. And that's based in Texas, a Republican state. So a lot of education in America is bad because of Republicans.
Parents let their kids act like demons, screaming or acting like spoiled brats, which will hold them back in the future at some point, because they won't learn to be polite and considerate.
Source? Can I have a source for that? Of course, I don't like seeing bratty kids, but is there a source for that, please? Are they letting their kids be bratty, or is that just you just watch TV and like just see like a reality TV show, and like all the kids are bratty, and it's like, oh, all left-leaning people are making their kids all bratty. So there you go. It's all left-leaning people's fault. And so it's like, can I get a source on that? The only reason I'm asking is because I do not trust this guy at all. And I think he's clearly lied in this video multiple times.
Social justice starts with the assumption that all humans are like blank pawns that are interchangeable, completely ignoring all historic and cultural factors in a purposeful stupidity. For example, in psychological studies, we've found men tend to be more interested in things and women in people. This explains why, say, this YouTube.
No, I don't think that's true. That's not true at all. Other studies have been shown that the reason why, I think that's really fucking bad. Oh my god, I can't believe he believes that. Because when it comes to like computer and computer science, the reason why a lot of women don't go in that field is because a lot of the the advertisement and things that are shown to go into that field are all men. So women don't feel like they can go in there because a lot of the advertisements show that it's like pretty much a men only field. And I forget which agency it is specifically. I think it might be, it's for the X-Files. And if, as you know, there's a woman, a lead woman in the X-Files. I forget what she does specifically. I know it has something to do with like the crime and like police and stuff. But it was shown because of that show, a lot of women actually like applied for that same job because they saw another woman being in that same job. So no, women being inherently into more people and men being inherently into more things is just not true. What the fuck?
YouTube channel has turned out to be 96% male, or engineers and craftsmen are heavily male. Like,
yeah, because the advertisement specifically targets males for that. So females so women don't feel like they're allowed in there because of those advertisements.
Likewise, why women are in psychiatry, medicine, and
that's a reason why representation in like media and other stuff is super important.
Childcare more than men. This isn't due to oppression. Why women are in psychiatry, medicine, and childcare more than men. This isn't due to...
Oh, really? Maybe... Oh, you don't think... So they're in childcare a lot. Maybe because fucking toxic masculinity says that women have to be child carers. They have to go in the kitchen. You know, they have to be barefoot and pregnant. And men can't be emotional. You know, it has to be because of women inherently want to love children.
Oppression, since this trend is most pronounced.
Man, this guy's anti-guy. I want you to know this guy is super anti-men, super anti-kings, because he just thinks that men should just be emotionless robots.
The most gender-equal societies like Scandinavia or Israeli kibbutzes. Left-wingers think that human nature is inherently malleable, which it largely isn't.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. You know what? I would like to ask him. Because he just said that, do you think black people are inherently more violent than any other group of people? Because in America, a lot of black people commit more crime than any other group of people. I want to, since his answer, if you follow his way of thought down the road, would be yes. It has to be yes, because he disagrees with left-leaning people, because I believe the way people act has to do entirely with their environment. You know, if I was born somewhere else, I will be a completely different person than I was right now. If I was born in fucking Europe, I would be a completely different... In Germany, I'll be a completely different person I'll be now. If I was born in a ghetto, I'll be a completely different person than I was now. And this guy doesn't believe that. So this guy must believe that brown black people are genetically like inclined to be more violent than any other group of people.
Although nurture does have big effects, so does nature. This leads to the left-wing obsession with controlling the discourse, or telling people what words they can and can't say, or with controlling pop culture. For a person who believes that humans aren't in...
Yeah, right-wingers don't do that at all, you know? Just ignore all, like, the book burning, all the stuff, how a lot of right-wingers say that video games are violent and children shouldn't play them, how comic books are violent, people kids shouldn't read them, about how a lot of movies are violent and a lot of sex, so children and other people shouldn't watch them. Just ignore all that. Just ignore every single stuff like that, especially like the satanic panic when it comes to rock music. Ignore all that. Just only left-wing people are doing that. Only them.
Control of objective reality, understanding objective truth and how to deal with it is the most important thing, since it allows us to deal with an ever-changing and complicated world. Thus, freedom of speech must be protected since it allows societies to look for the truth most effectively.
Hey, I'm a big freedom of speech guy. I do think it should be protected against fucking right-wingers, because out of everybody, they're the ones that are most like at risk, not at risk, but they're the ones that want to get rid of it the most out of everybody. And I am pro censorship as well, because when you let Nazis talk, they get rid of other people's if you let Nazis talk and they spread their beliefs, do you think when a Nazi gains power, do you think they're gonna allow like other people their freedom of speech? No, they're not. They're gonna take everybody's freedom of speech away. So we should get rid of people who don't like other people's freedom of speech,
However, from the social justice viewpoint, that humans construct human nature, controlling how people think allows humans to be able to engineer our nature. Anyone who reads any history knows that human nature stays the same no matter what people believe. People can scream at the—
Can you tell us what human nature is? Can you tell us? Not be too broad, or too vague. I forget which one it is. But can you tell us? Oh, look, I love these biblically accurate angels. Look at that wheel. He's spinning. He do really be spinning, though.
the top of their lungs that their ideology or religion will abolish cruelty and corruption, but once that group gets into power, their elite or religion will abolish cruelty and corruption, but—
So you think humans are inherently cruel and corrupt? Okay. Nice to know. Nice to know.
Once that group gets into power, their elite, unless given incentive structures against those things, will perpetuate them. In fact, the people who are often most dangerous are those that believe themselves to be good, since they have no protections against their own evil.
What are you talking about? Everybody thinks that they're good. What are you talking about, huh? Everybody thinks that they're good, so everybody is bad against everybody else?
When a social justice—
Oh, what did it say? This is why you continue to see fluctuation words for oppressed groups like switching out retard for moron and mentally disabled for evil for black and for African Americans. Since HEW believe is changing the word, they're changing connotations in people's minds. It's like this, you know what this reads like? This reads like, I want to say the N-word with the hard R so bad. Let me say the N-word. That's what it's telling me. He just wants to say the N-word so bad when it comes to this text right here. He wants to say it so bad.
This person screams at you for saying the wrong words. They think that you are allowing racism to perpetuate, and they're gradually engineering the human race to superiority.
I mean, if you call a black person the N-word with a hard R, I mean, I think you're perpetuating racism.
This is very convenient for them, since controlling the discourse like Hollywood or school board curriculums is very easy, while they continue to eschew actually effective real-world measures. You know what would help Black America? Trade schools, improved education, more effective communities, and stable families. However, not a single—
True! And you know what stops that? Racism and fucking Republicans. Because every time we want to do something like that, they always fucking shut it down. Especially when it comes to like the infrastructure bill that Biden tried to pass so much. And then he finally been able to pass it, but it was like way lower than he actually wanted it to pass it out. So, you know,
modern social justice government is pushing for measures like that. I mean, just look at defund the police, where even though police departments are often corrupt and do really inhumane things, the number of unarmed black men who are killed by the police is actually relatively small, and weakening the police actually results in far more black deaths because it increases black-on-black crime, which is a far higher number. Social justice makes the weird logical jump that—
But you know what's another higher number? White on white crime, brown on brown crime. You just kill people who are around you.
All disparities in racial income must come from racism today. This ignores that, first of all, let's say the difference between African American and white incomes is caused by many factors, including racism, but
especially white, black Americans are poorer than whites due to largely geographic and disease reasons. Africa was one of the least developed countries in the world. This meant that African society developed none of the cultural norms associated with modern capitalist society. Hard disagree, because if you actually read some of like the European settlers that go into some African countries and African cities, a lot of them actually say like, yo, this is like the most advanced civilization that we have ever seen in life. Now that shit is just straight up racism right there, saying like how Africa like we're so underdeveloped. They didn't even use the wheel. They're so underdeveloped compared to our white people. That is just racism right there. American slavery prevented attaining useful skills like literacy and other leadership was wiped out and oppressed. African Americans whose ancestors were free are significantly wealthier than their slave. American slavery was exceptional in providing absolutely new positions for black leadership. Yes, and it's still being felt for today. And that's why a lot of people actually want like reparations, because it actually will help like black people to come closer to white people, because they were so fucked over by America. Blacks were also placed in the least developed part of America. The lowland South is regions of poor education, social mobility, and schools lower and on almost every metric. True. After the Civil War, the black community was crushed again by white supremacy regulation, the cultural system that lynched their leadership and made it difficult for foreign business, kept the counter system, and kept most of their... Okay. What? He's so close. He's so close to being right. But why? I don't understand how he's so close to being right, yet he just takes a shift to the wrong side so fast. Migration to the city seemed to have resulted in the rise of antisocial traits such as crime, vagrancy, and family breakdown. So why? This is basically the same thing as what's happening in Africa at the same time, and it's called see, this is the shit right here, boy. This is how you get so wrong. Right here, he says he's saying is pretty much that black people are genetically inclined to be antisocial, to to do more crime, to be more vagrant, and have family breakdowns, which is not true. Because the family breakdowns happen a lot with the drug war, because they took out a lot of single black fathers and putting them in prison, and it happened with the same as if you can look it up with weed consumption. A lot of white people and black people, they consume the same amount of weed, but when they get sentenced to go to jail and prison, black people get way higher sentencing than white people, even though they have like the same, like they had no other crimes before, they didn't do anything before, they had like the same record. So he's just saying okay, after the Second World War, America became the technology which educated predicted social success for the African community, which had been prevented from attaining education for centuries. The shift to an education-based economy was terrible. Okay.
Also factors starting in Africa, geography, culture, and historical chance. To say that deconstructing...
And you can't say all black people are the same, because genetic diversity in Africa is way bigger. Because a lot of black people, if you actually look at like genetics, a lot of black people are actually closer in genetic wise to white people than actually other black people in Africa, just because how diverse Africa is in when it comes to like genetics. So you can't be like, oh, all black people are like this because they're all dark skinned, they're all from Africa, which is just not true.
Modern racism would help negate all of that history is insane. Something the movement always ignores is that if you look at an ethnic breakdown of income by groups in America, it's clear that America is not primarily based off oppression. British Americans are on the lower end of income among white Americans, while the highest earners are some of the most oppressed groups like Asians and Jews.
Again, maybe because Japanese people have to have money to come across a big ass fucking ocean to get over here. So we're already gonna get the wealthiest of all of these countries to come over here. So when it comes to black people and like Mexicans, we just gotta hop over the border. We can come over here with absolutely nothing. So that's the reason why we're lower. And black people, they're brought over here by slaves and, forcefully like being oppressed for such a long time. Only recently they stopped being oppressed writing wise, in like law. And even then, there's still laws out there that hurt them. So
You see big
this is not a good
fluctuations
good
inside the
thing.
black community, with descendants of immigrants from the Caribbean and black people whose ancestors were free before the Civil War being much richer than the rest of the black community. Similarly, among Hispanic groups, race has nothing to do with wealth. The mostly white Puerto Ricans are much poorer than the darker skinned Mexicans or Dominicans.
Oh, maybe because Puerto Rico and fucking Mexico are two very different fucking countries, so you can't really fucking compare them to like that.
Social justice
Because fucking Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, and Mexico is its own country, and they both have different fucking histories. Okay.
theory believes in this thing called intersectionality, which holds that there's this underlying oppressive structure to society that oppresses women, gay people, ethnic minorities, etc., all at the same time. And once we remove it, oppression will be gone. They take this from Marxism, which has the utopian idea that once the capitalists are gone, the world will be rich and the working classes will live in plenty.
That's not true. We don't think it's going to be utopian. It's always going to be bigotry, always going to be discrimination. However, there's no reason to not try to fight against that and try to get rid of it as much as possible.
But both are conspiracy theories. Saying that there's this secret cultural force that is secretly causing all of this oppression around the world without any reference to its own self-interest and only indirect proof that it exists literally fits the definition of a conspiracy theory. The good way to look for
Okay, oppression of all sorts has existed across history. It has always been informed by regional and personal these which social justice misses. For example, both northern and southern whites were racist before the evil war. What the hell is the evil war? I want to know what the fuck that is. But the North fought a war to free the slaves. In the South, there's a lot of horrible racism, yet there are many best friends and mistresses over the color line. You could tell that someone is a conspiracy when they say all of blank race thinks this. That's what you're doing. That is what you're doing when you're talking about. Okay. Okay, but we never say that the North wasn't racist. We just say that South was just evil when it comes to both of these, and we're a lot worse than both of these. I don't know what the fuck you're trying to say here.
conspiracy theories is that they string a bunch.
Wait. For the slaves. In the South, there are a lot of horrible racism, but were many best friends and mistresses over the color line. Bro, that's literally the argument. I can't be racist. I have a black friend. I can't be racist. I have a black wife. I can't be racist. I can't. What? And a lot of these mistresses, quote unquote mistresses, when they were slaves, do you think they had an option to just say no to the slave master trying to have sex with them? No. A lot of that, I would say 99.9% of that, if not 100% of that, was probably rape. So it's weird.
Definition of
It's weird.
Theory. The good way to look for conspiracy theories is that they string a bunch of factions together into a black or white worldview.
If you disagree with me, then you're a tool of Satan, which only works with Catholics, Muslims, and Native Americans, the bourgeoisie, who also control peasants, aristocrats, and all popular culture. That's not true. Bourgeoisie means like the rich 1%, people who control the means of production, people who control businesses like CEOs and stuff. And there's also like small bourgeoisie, like people who control just like small businesses and stuff like that. Patriarchy, who are all in collusion with all men. White supremacy is all of culture, but somehow does not include what how what the fuck does that even mean? But no, patriarchy just means that you're just pro the patriarchy, which is, I feel like, is self-explanatory. Like this guy definitely is, because he's like pro some what you call it, white not white toxic masculinity. There you go. Global Jewry, those who puppet mastering the U.S. capitalism and communism. I never heard global Jewry before.
Yeah, let's ignore the massive differences inside the black or white community, or men and women, and
let's go back.
Theories is that they string a bunch of factions together into a black or white worldview. Yeah, let's ignore the massive differences inside the black or white community, or men and women, and create these binaries.
I have never seen like a very left-leaning person call. Wait, so I think all of these are supposed to be for like left-leaning, like lefties, like anarchists, socialists, communists, and all that stuff. When do we call people Satan? We don't. That's a right-wing thing to say. That's a right-wing thing to say. Like when it comes to like evangelical Christians, when it comes to Catholics, where most of them are right-wing, and other stuff. So he's just lying here. What a weasel little liar, dude. What a liar. I never heard Glory Jewelry before.
One of the defining features of social justice is that it formed due to a confluence of different academic departments shoehorned together under the common alliance of intersectionality. Let me do the briefest possible rundown of each of these schools. The first is queer theory, which is the most postmodern and believes that human sexuality and gender is built off oppressive social structures rather than being a Darwinistic necessity, which is built off ensuring the survival of the human race.
Oh yeah, this guy is a dumb fuck. Nice to know, because he does not know that gender and sex are two different things. Sex is when it comes to penises, balls, pussies, and titties and stuff like that. And gender is gender is when a woman needs to wear a dress, because that is what women wear, is dresses. Women are not genetically inclined to wear dresses. That's more of a social construct that happened right there. Because if you look in the past, some men, like men wore dresses before, but it just changes because of the social, what happening in society at that point. So of course, this guy just does not know basic sex and gender are like two different fucking things. Okay.
It purports the theory of a gender spectrum that is entirely without scientific evidence as a starting point. You know, when
what are you talking about? If you talk to any scientist, if you just look it up on Google, you would be wrong. I would be right. So did you just not study? I know he didn't, but it's a rhetorical question. He did not study anything. He did not look anything up.
It just keeps on asking you why, and then why again, and then why, and feels really smart once you can't answer the fifth why. That's queer analysis, which tries to break every concept down into logical salami slicing into irrelevance.
He's trying to twist that he actually has no answers into being like, oh, they keep asking me why I believe this, and I can't respond. But that's their fault. You know, it's their fault that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
An example I gave a friend is when we were on vacation together in a log cabin, is that the queer analysis would try to break down how the act of us being in a cabin really meant nothing and was inherently oppressive. Then there's postcolonial theory, which largely exists to blame all the failures of postcolonial countries on European colonization, ignoring any other factors and even saying that we should respect magical ways of thinking on a similar wavelength of thinking about modern science. Even reaching points like the West trying to
I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe respect their culture just like we respect like Christianity and other stuff. I think I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in any of that. I think it is all dumb, but I think that's what people are trying to say. I never heard that before, but I think I'm trying to steel man that argument.
Promulgate education in the colonies or anthropologically study local cultures, ignoring any other factors.
Can you give me, okay, he says over here as well how a lot of people say a lot of these countries fail because of colonialism, and he's like, oh, they're ignoring all the other factors. Okay, you're right. Give me some pointers, you know. But he doesn't. He just runs right past it, because I guarantee he does not have any other pointers. He's just saying it just because he just wants to try to sound right.
Or anthropologically study local.
Oh man, whoever drew this was bad. I feel bad for this kid over here. Oh no, look at his face. Oh no.
Cultures in a scientific way was cultural imperialism. After that is African and Latino studies, which rather than actually studying those cultures with any curiosity, turn them into grievance programs which largely blame Western civilization for every failing in those societies, which in its own way becomes its own form of racism that prevents these people from having any agency outside of the white man's story.
I mean, that is true how I talked about this. I think it either one of my streams, I don't know if it's on my YouTube channel or not, how whenever you hear like Latin countries be talked about, it's always when like white people are involved. You know, I think I did put that up, but I blame that on right leaning people, mostly because they're the ones who right now really control like the books that we read. When it comes to like McGraw Hill, because that's the book I had to read. Um, but what else did he say? I lost. Let me see.
Western civilization for every failing in those societies, which
Again, he doesn't answer, but Western civilization definitely hurt all those countries as well, and especially now when it comes to like, if you actually know some of the histories of these countries, when some of these countries, I think it's Guatemala or something like that, they actually democratically elected a socialist president, and then the CIA came in, assassinated him, put up a dictator who was pro America, and literally just fucked over the country. So I think you can actually say that, you know, you can blame America and stuff like that for the failing of all these countries, because it's pretty terrible dictatorship in Uganda, Venezuela, Cuba, Libya. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of them will put it up because of America.
in its own way becomes its own form of racism that prevents these people from having any agency outside of the white man's story. Women's studies works exactly the same, except replacing women for ethnic minorities and men for white people. You have the body shaming and ableism movement, which don't have academic departments, but are more widespread in social justice as a culture in the broader social sphere. The body shaming movement's really negative in that it tells fat people it isn't their fault and it's society's fault for not saying fat people are pretty.
I don't think they're saying that. They're just saying that I do agree that we shouldn't push people to be like accept that being like that fucking big, being fat like is like good for you. It's not, but it's just pushing people to being like, you know, don't talk about like fat people like the fat piece. You're a fat piece of shit. You know, you go out to the gym, because 9 times out of 10, that will actually discourage them from going out to the gym and bettering themselves. They would just probably just make them like sit down being like, oh, he's being me, I'm sure I'm gonna get even fatter, just being myself still, you know. I think that's what it comes with that. I want to see what he's talking about here.
How it tells fat people it isn't their fault and it's society's fault for not saying fat people are pretty. However, even though there is cultural fluctuation, beauty standards are genetically driven and based off Darwinistic fitness. At the same
No, it's not. Why do you think all these, what do you think Indian model, Argentinian model, and Chinese model, why do you think all of these are very light-skinned women? Why do you think that? Do you think it's just not because America is like the biggest fucking cultural thing in the world right now, and they put up whiteness as being like the most beautiful thing right now? Because there's plenty of very darker skin Argentinian women, Indian women that are prettier than these two, but they only put up very light skin or even white people when it comes to that. And the Darwinian thing is not true at all, because if it was true, then you should have looked back in society and it should have been all like the same, how like women that look like this are all like the beauty standards. But it's not true. If you look back like in medieval times or something like that, or I forget, Renaissance time, I forget which one specifically, a lot of those women were like pretty big, you know, and like if you see those dresses, they're like huge fucking dresses and shit like that, and it make them look fat. So they didn't have really an hourglass shape.
same time, being fat is objectively unhealthy. Even though our society puts out unhealthy
Whoa!
body
I don't know if I can show that on Twitch. Whoa! Whoa! I don't know if I can show that on Twitch. Okay. Hold up. Let me go back. Okay, I gotta, just to make sure I can show that on Twitch. I'm gonna respond to it right here. See what he says.
Being fat is objectively unhealthy.
Although, to be fair, chubby people were seen as attractive in early modern and medieval periods, since there are eras where food was scarcer. However, these are not obese at the same time. There are very few fat people, and you can also exotic pairs of thinner people. But it shows fat people. So you're literally showing a painting that just disproves your argument. Okay, nice. Nice, just exactly what I was talking about, and he's
puts out
wrong.
Unhealthy body expectations. Going the opposite direction is just stupid. It's so
It is dumb, but I don't think it's happening that much. Okay, we're good now. We're good.
depressing to see a generation of young women being fat, badly put together, and spewing anti-male feminist propaganda, and then wondering why
Hey, you know who does that? TERFs, the people you like, the people you agreed with in previous in like before, like in the previous of this video.
They're lonely and no one will marry them. They've been sold an image of the world that's just not true. The ableist movement also says that people with physical disabilities aren't actually disabled, it's just society's fault for not recognizing them as normal. It would be good.
And that's not true. They're just saying just treat disabled people like people. That's all that's going on. Don't make fun of them for being disabled.
Good if society made it easier on the disabled, many of whom are veterans that have sacrificed for their nations, but this philosophy is pushed to horrifying extremes, an example of which is the TikTok mental health influencers who pretend to have mental illnesses in order to get attention. This in turn has caused a spike in...
Do you think that's just because these people are weird and dumb, not because of the other shit you're talking about?
Large problems due to the glorification of these mental illnesses, which means lots of Gen Z kids pretend to have mental illnesses in order to look cool. The final part of the social justice coalition's environmentalism, which is honestly one of my soft spots to the movement. Global warming's an existential threat that we really need to get on, and nature is beautiful and ought to be preserved, and the right should be blamed more than the left for often just not caring, but...
Way more than the left. What are you talking about? I read up on something like this, and I saw not studies, but like, fuck, what is it called when people show like a graph and show like, okay, this many percentages of like conservatives and Republicans believe this, but I forget the word right now specifically, but I saw that only like 30% of Republicans actually believe that climate change and like global warming exists. 30%, so a vast majority don't think that something that is objectively true is true. So yeah, we should blame way more conservatives and Republicans on this than any left-leaning person.
The social justice attempt at climate change just isn't effective. You know what would help us turn away from carbon energy sources? Nuclear energy, and even more investment into nuclear research.
That is true. That is true, right? What he's saying right here is true. A lot of left-leaning people don't like nuclear stuff. Well, I think that just a lot of people in general just don't like nuclear stuff because we see that, like, we hear nuclear, we think of the atomic bombs and stuff, and also like when it comes to like Chernobyl, we don't want like another Chernobyl happening, but that's like very rare. A Chernobyl is like very rare to happen, so we should definitely rely more on nuclear energy,
which would allow these reactors to be far more efficient. However, the social justice movement has always been the group against nuclear energy. Likewise, the best way to lower carbon emissions would be to replace coal with natural gas, but the social justice wing has continually blocked policies supporting natural gas. Thus, in fact, social justice has hurt the environment far more.
Source, please, can I get a source on that? No? Okay, no, just ignore sources, just straight up believe you, just straight up, okay.
These threads have in common? Well, first of all, they hold that whatever oppressed group they're supposed to protect has no agency. In their view, the only way ethnic minorities, women, gay people, etc. can be helped is by concessions from the broader society. In real terms, telling people that they're helpless is the worst thing possible. Even groups under horrifically oppressive conditions like the Jews, Asian Americans, or women in strongly patriarchal societies have been able to find ways to thrive in certain forms. I'm not blaming the oppressed for not doing more, but fatalism is the worst thing possible and not even...
And no... I like how he's citing stuff like this, but you know what happened? A lot of these people didn't really have help, so it took so long for them to actually get like a good grip on themselves and like push themselves out of like oppression and stuff, because they're just on by itself. And now today, even though he's completely wrong about like the victim mentality that we're giving like people of color, he's completely wrong about that. Just wipe that out of your brain. He's just wrong. But us like actually like saying how the system is actually oppressing people is actually like not skyrocketing, but it's helping a lot faster when it comes to having more equality. So he's just saying, I want people to have equality, but don't do it too fast. Just go slower. I don't even know if he wants equality at this point.
True. In fact, social justice treats having initiative as morally wrong. I remember when J.D. Vance released his book Hillbilly Elegy about how he pulled himself out of poverty in Appalachia. It was widely hated since it was supposedly giving poor Americans false hope. There are so many...
Well, maybe it is. I don't know about the book. He's bringing up this like weird. Maybe this actually has a good point on why it was is why it's bad. I don't know anything about this book, so American Post. Yeah, maybe it is
Think
bad.
pieces
Who
about
knows?
how heroic stories, whether Batman, Hercules, or the like, are oppressive since it encourages people to act and take initiative. I made a video here about how envy influences the social justice movement, and I can really see that, especially in this part of it. To take something from that video, as social media distorts our view of reality, it makes envy more powerful. People see people more attractive than
Is
them.
this social justice? I feel like this is more capitalism because there's a lot of people who, when they look like that, they put on a lot of fashion stuff, specifically in like richer stuff like Gucci and like other shit like that, and they go into like expensive ass fucking places for vacation. Is that social justice? To me, that's more capitalism than anything else because it's telling you, oh, look, I'm rich. You know, I'm rich. You're not rich. I can be here because I'm rich.
And those that are doing better in general. And if you look at who social justice attacks, whether the wealthy white men, and especially with cancel culture, canceling celebrities or successful ancestors that we could possibly be envious against.
Churchill was pretty bad, yeah. He did some stuff that's good, but he was not a good person.
Then you can clearly see that the movement is driven in large part by envy. Similarly, that no change is possible in the past, but all the change in the world is possible in the future. Africana departments.
Is he saying no? These guys are Nazis. I think this is Charlottesville. Is he trying to portray Nazism and fascism as social justice movements? Oh my god. Oh my god.
In the past, but all the change in the world is possible in the future. Africana departments like to say racism is as bad today as the 1960s, yet segregation is gone, America's had a black president, and an extremely disproportionate...
Racism is over, guys. We don't have racism, you know, because we have a black president, so racism is over. 4 to 10 of the top artists of 2020 were black compared to 30% of the population. No. Now, you know, okay, you know, I can actually, this is actually super racist. I won't tell you why. Because this shows that when it comes to people of color and black people, it shows that in order to get popular, in order to get money, you have to be entertaining to white people, or you have to be entertaining. You can't be like a doctor. You can't be like a dentist. You can't be a lawyer. You have to be entertaining, you know?
Proportionate amount of American cultural figures are black. However, these departments act as if any changes are possible in the future, totally remaking society through social engineering if they're given power. And finally, you can totally see the self-serving and irrational nature of social justice through how it treats the rest of the world. Feminist activists in America never talk about the worst treated women in the world, namely in the Islamic world and Africa. At the same time, social justice ignores...
I mean, do they? I mean, do you guys? Honestly, because you guys, you Christians, I don't know if he is Christian, but he hasn't talked about how, circumcising, guys as babies is actually like just as bad as that. So he's trying to be like, oh, we're hypocritical for not addressing stuff in another country. Well, we'll just talk about America, dog. We're talking about America. Stop trying to jump to another country. We're trying to fix our backyard before we go out and try to fix like the world and shit like that.
Horrible humanitarian crises around the world, like the genocide of the Rohingya in Myanmar, just only focusing upon the Western world. I mean, they're...
What? He's just like, okay, you guys are hypocrites because you're not talking about everything in the fucking world right now. Every single fucking thing. If that rat is being oppressed, you're not talking about that rat being oppressed. Therefore, hypocrite. Again, have you not heard of we need to fix our backyard before like talking about the rest of the world? And people do talk about the Myanmar genocide.
More slaves in the world now than there were in 1800, and a lot of them go in supply chains to make the stuff that we use, and you never hear supposed anti-slavery advocates talk about them.
Yes, we do. Yes, you do. You're just lying right now. Yes.
And finally, they all ignore class, which I think is a tragedy since class is a legitimately big problem in our modern society. This is the era of the least meritocracy in American history, the highest inequality. As an example, 60% of the
What do you think is that? What do you think? What do you think? I want to know what he knows. I know my answer. It's capitalism. What's his answer?
students in the top 20 American universities are from the 1% of wealthiest families. Social justice does lip service to class, but they treat all white people, even the ones who grew up in grinding poverty, of which there's a big number, as upper class in their worldview. None of social justice's policies
Oh, maybe because we're talking about we are talking about class issues and mostly about race. Because when we help poor like people of color, it'll most likely help uh, 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 white people of color too. And there's a lot more disproportional amounts of people of color that are poor than there are white people. Even though there are more white people in America that are poorer than like people of color, that but disproportionately wise, it makes sense. Well, it makes sense because there's a lot more white people in fucking America than there are any other race. So we're talking about disproportional amounts here. And white people, when they're poor, they actually have more what you call it, more access to get out of poverty than anybody else.
target the men.
So we should talk about that too. We should align ourselves with poor white people. But again, that's reasons why.
Any problems the lower class face, or do real world policies that would help the lower classes. In fact, they end up opposing policies that help the working classes, like shutting down immigration and constructing tariffs. I think it's the greatest irony that they
Wait, what is he trying to say? Immigration bad?
Any problems the lower class face, or do real world policies that would help the lower class.
Immigrants, wage, height, what? Life expectancy, marriage average. What does it even mean? What does the graph even mean? What is he saying? Immigration bad? However, okay, immigration is good. Immigration, I guess, has total effect on weight. I don't know. Immigration is good overall. It's literally good overall when it comes to the country. The only people that are hurt by immigration are people who drop out of college. I'm not gonna drop out of college, drop out of high school, and that's a very, very small amount of people. But the people who are most affected by immigration are other immigrants. That's why when you see a lot of like immigrants that come to America, there's like anti-immigration. Well, it's because they don't want any more immigrants coming in here because they're the ones that are being hurt by immigration. So again, immigration is just an overall net benefit to this country. There's like barely any problems with it.
Classes. In fact, they end up opposing policies that help the working classes, like shutting down immigration and constructing tariffs. I think it's the greatest irony.
Terrorists don't hurt. I mean, terrorists don't work. Terrorists do not work at all. And fucking immigration definitely does help the working class. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Ignore the largest injustice of our times, and I don't think it's a coincidence in that this movement's concentrated among the college-educated upper and middle classes. The question that we face at this point is that if social...
Is it college educated? So the smartest people.
Justice clearly makes no sense, and you've got to remember, this is a movement with some of the smartest people in the country in it. Why are people incentivized to believe in it? What in our society makes us liable to this mass delusion? Before World War I, for better or for worse, the West was powered off a combination of Christianity, capitalism, nationalism, white supremacy, and science. However, the world wars were so traumatic that the West is still in a massive hangover and a horrifying reaction. World War I was an evil and terrible war, fought between nations that were pretty similar and highly developed, but showed that even after centuries of progress, barbarity lay beneath the facade of civilization. This was further reinforced when the Germans, supposedly one of the most civilized nations in the world, committed one of the worst atrocities of all time in World War II. Even the good guys in the war, the Americans, killed millions of people while using the most horrifying weapon of all time. This meant that the West is going through a crisis of confidence that we're currently living through. If the West could still perpetuate all these horrifying barbarisms in the world wars, how could it claim...
He's just doing the white guilt shit. That's what he's doing right now.
...claim any moral superiority, and how could it claim its progress had any meaning? Although capitalism, science, and Christianity resulted in countless real-world advances and progresses, since they were used...
There you go. So he says, people are normally shocked when I say Christianity resulted in real-world moral advances since the historiography trends to be biased against Christianity is fundamentally true. Christianity ended slavery in the Dark Age Europe. Okay, Christianity and its... Oh, okay. Yeah, it ended in Europe, but forget that Christianity, that slavery, is still happening today. There's more slaves. That's what he said, and B, that many a years later, America, which was very Christian, still had a lot of slaves in it, and the South didn't want to get rid of their slaves, and the South is way more Christian than the North. So there you go. And also drove for early human rights. No, of course they drove for early human rights because the majority of the people were there were Christian, but the people who are also against human rights are Christians. Who do you think opposes gay rights and gay marriage? Christians. You know who opposed the civil rights movement? Christians. Christian world was the best place to be a woman in the pre-modern world, and Catholic philosophy is the basis of modern science and logic. I don't know if that's true. Christianity also created individualism, and by banning cousin marriage, the moral advances of the 19th centuries, like the abolishment of slavery and the reduction of poverty, were justified with Christian. Okay, and I like how he says, he was like, oh, SJWs, they don't talk about how in Africa and in Muslims they circumcise women. Dog, you're a Christian. You guys been circumcising fucking little boys, little baby boys for ever. What? You calling us hypocrites? Okay.
To justify the horrors that were the world wars, they were treated as if they were fundamentally evil. When you look at the group that really got with social justice and made it popular, it was the baby boomers, or the children of the World War II generation that largely tried to react against everything their parents stood for.
You can easily predict social justice philosophy based
I mean, a lot of the baby boomers now are very reactionary and very right-leaning.
What's the opposite of the Nazis? Where the Nazis were racist against non-whites, nationalistic, militaristic, and misogynistic. Meanwhile, social justice is the opposite, or racist against white people, says the nation is evil, is toxically pacifist, and says gender doesn't exist, but still hates men. The Nazis...
Again, he does not know what the fuck he's talking about.
Were so evil that people wanted to do the opposite afterwards, but truth be told, you can't just have two dots in your moral framework, and trying to do the opposite of anything to a ludicrous degree just brings...
What does it even mean? What Europe should have done since World War II? Lil Pump's music? Brownieism? Nazism? Let's maintain a healthy bed. Communism? The Handmaid's Tale? Sex slaves making McNewts for Jeff Bezos? What does this even mean? Being path and irrelevant?
Another evil.
The social justice philosophy gradually got put in place and reached...
Great irony that boomers are not mocked for not being social justice enough for our year generations, even though they created the movement themselves. This is what always happens with radical revolution movements, from the French Revolution to yesterday's radicals or tomorrow counter-revolutionaries. I mean, but again, if you talk to a lot of boomers, they're against gay marriage and transgenders and other shit. I'm pretty racist as well, so okay.
Just climax as boomers were in power for longer and longer, and were thus able to enact their worldviews.
And boomers are the majority of people that are against fucking climate change.
Short terms, the world wars were so traumatic that it resulted in the West trying to commit suicide, which is social justice. Saying that social justice is a suicidal impulse will be controversial, but it really shouldn't be.
This is fascist view right now. This is a very fascist view right now because he's talking about how social justice they're pussies, they can easily be destroyed. But now he's saying they're so strong that's gonna cause the death of Western civilization. This fascist talk right now.
SJWs literally say that Western civilization and whiteness are evil hierarchies that have to be ripped apart.
So just to explain about white fragility that prevents white Americans. I mean, this is white fragility. This whole video is white fragility. And maybe the social justice people are saying, oh, we should get rid of whiteness. We should get rid of race so everybody can be fucking human beings, just all love each other.
They say whiteness is evil and try to increase diversity as a moral good, as if decreasing the Western or whiteness of an organization would make it better.
There's literally no contingent social argument for diversity. Across history, homogeneous societies are far more successful than diverse ones. That's not true. That's not true. Because hey, you can talk about America right now. America is the most diverse country in the world, and we're the most successful ones when it comes to our like fucking economy and stuff like that. So it's just not true. And you talk about Romans. Rome was very diverse for a long time, and they were very successful. Fucking Egypt back when they're, I don't even know when they're pulling the fucking pyramids. They were very diverse and very successful. So he's just lying right now. Does this guy know anything about history? East Asia to Europe and to the Greek city-states, while both the ethnic areas like Austro-Hungarian, Empire, modern India, or Celtics have far worse record. It can work, but it's harder to pull off. The diversity that does matter is that the self-interest and thoughts where society is dominated by one social class or ideology. So he's just saying, again, when it comes, this guy is super racist. This guy is 100% racist because he's saying diversity is bad. White people need an ethno state. Pretty much what he's saying. He's too cowardly to say outright, but it's definitely what I'm reading here. There's something inherently wrong with whiteness that must be fixed by bringing in people of color.
They openly hate and try to destroy all the pillars of Western society, whether or not they're positive such as science, capitalism, freedoms like speech,
it's too much to
and
read.
Christianity. They go even further, wanting to deconstruct any stabilizing force in society, whether the family...
Oh no, destroying property, which can be replaced, is not violent. I mean, it's violent, but I agree with destroying property. Property can be replaced. Marriage and unfeminist institution. I mean, that is true, because when you look back in marriage, a lot of women were forcefully married to another person. So I think that's what they're talking about. That's true. Irony is that the family and property rights help the poor the most. Poor people who have two-parent households and get married are far better off, whilst in societies without good property rights and rich have the influence to keep their property safe, which the poor do not. I mean, they're not talking about family. They're just talking about marriage here. And marriage can help, but mostly it's two-parent households.
Relations between the sexes.
Like, you can have like two lesbian women taking care of a child. They're gonna be as good as a man and a woman raising that child.
Loyalty to higher authority or property rights. The relativism and unthinking hatred of the West and social justice is disgusting. This is literally the movement where feminists are allied with Islamic radicals due to their shared hatred of the West. Likewise, the moral...
Or maybe because in America, Muslim people are way more secular than Christians, you know. Whenever you see anti-abortion shit, there's Christians out there. They're not Muslims out there, you know. When you see against gay people, there's Christians out there. There's not Muslims people out there. So maybe that's why they align themselves with American Muslims, because they're way more secular, way more left-leaning than Christians.
Relativism in which any criticism of foreign societies is...
And it's pretty ironic that he's this is why I don't like fucking religious people. You know, you believe Christianity is bullshit. Christianity does a lot of bad stuff, but then you point the finger at like Islam and be like, oh, they're bad too. I mean, look inside, dog. Christianity is nowhere near it's just as bad as fucking Islam.
The West. Likewise, the moral relativism in which any criticism of foreign societies is matched by the often ludicrous comparison to the West. Africa is corrupt and China's authoritarian, but so is America, they'd say, not realizing how wrong they are. The fact that people are...
How they wrong? How they wrong? Please, can you tell me, please? Please, can you give me any answers?
Actively breaking the law and often going on horrifying journeys to reach Western countries, while the reverse never happens, suggests that the West is doing pretty well as of now.
Yeah, because a lot of the West fucked up all those countries. When you talk about Latin America, every single fucking Latin American country has been fucked over by America.
Meme does a better job of breaking down social justice.
So it's weird. It's like you fuck over people's countries and then you get mad when they come over to your country because your country is only as good because you fucked over other countries.
This is suicidal impulse than anything I could say. This shows how every single action a white person could do is racist. The only thing a white person could possibly...
moves out. I mean, it just depends on like, oh my god. Oh, there's way more nuance when it moves. When you see a lot of black people move into an area, inner city area, and all the white people that are living there, they leave. It's 100% white flight, and gentrification is a real fucking thing. Sees color. Wait, what? No one's. Wait, when you talk about sees color, what does that even mean? That's so fucking bro. I don't even. What? If a white person sees color is automatically racist? I never heard that before. I think the only thing I can think of is when like they see color and they automatically discriminate against. Like I guess doesn't see color is definitely racist. Doesn't partake in culture, non-inclusive, engages in the culture appropriation. I mean, it just depends on what you do. Is way more nuanced than what the fuck this guy's talking about.
Do to not sin is to support their cause.
I mean, when you talk about if you never see a white person put on like a Native American like headdress and like the stuff they wear, they will never be called like non-inclusive.
And give them more power. The social justice movement has been so successful since in the vacuum of belief that
this guy is all over the place. He's calling social justice all over the place, but this motherfucker is literally all over the fucking place.
After the world wars crushed our previous moral pillars, social justice was simply just loud and there was no moral push back to work against them. Thus, those with scruples push aside those without in the disorganized opposition.
Scruples?
Similarly, every vehicle of cultural output like education and media, or the people who could formulate arguments against social justice were heavily leftist. At the same time, social justice plays to genuinely worth.
Wait, what?
Similarly, every vehicle of cultural output like those without in the disorganized opposition. Similarly, every vehicle of cultural output like education and media, or the people who could formulate arguments against social justice were heavily leftist. At the same time, social justice plays to genuinely worthwhile causes that the average decent person of a Western country would support.
Okay, no one. He's showing this stuff about the Coke cans. This is fucking capitalist companies trying to like get into the minds of social justice people. All capitalist companies want to do is just make money. And nobody liked this. Nobody on the left liked this video. And the people who dislike this video the most are left-leaning people. Companies put out woke ads and act woke to get sales, meaning they're more anti-racist than racist since it makes money. The massive success of black pop culture suggests weak racism. Not really. That's not how things work.
Your average modern person doesn't support oppression of gay people or ethnic minorities. I mean, I feel this. One of my best friends is a climate change advocate, and another is an ex-Black Panther who's an advocate for police reform. And many police departments around America do need serious restructuring, and...
He's not racist, guys. He has an ex-Black Panther friend. He's not racist. He's definitely not lying. Just like he definitely did not lie this entire video.
We should be dealing with climate change, but social justice pushes for these worthwhile causes that one would look like a monster to stand against in the worst ways possible. The social justice movement likes to say that if they had more authority, they'd be able to fix the systemic problems, but from looking at real-world evidence, that's clearly not the case. There are plenty of areas that have been under the control of social justice ideologues and have been for a while. However, as a good example, look at the American West Coast, which has incredibly high inequality, still has a good deal of racial segregation, what amounts to regressive and classist policies like extremely strict housing laws, which hurt the lower classes, as well as being so negative for businesses as to weaken their economies, and crippling problems like homelessness and drug use.
I mean, as an example, look at this.
I mean, again, how recent has the left... But there's liberals, they're still capitalists, so of course they're going to still do that. Because liberals are still capitalists. A leftist has never ran a fucking governor seat and like a mayor seat.
The city of Los Angeles, which effectively stopped enforcing rule of law, and so mass robberies occurred in this train area, effectively turning it into a hellscape.
It's not a coincidence that people are leaving from blue states going to red ones at a really fast
Maybe because
rate
it's hella
now.
expensive, yeah.
20 years ago, the West Coast was extremely creative, pleasant, and prosperous, so much so that it became the center of the future tech revolution. However, as left-wing ideologues seized control of these states, it precipitated their decline. Alternatively, look at Canada.
He's definitely lying here. There's definitely a lot more than that.
Where as radical leftists gain more and more power, they've pushed for authoritarian policies as leftists do every time. Which takes us to the main...
Does he not know what a leftist is? A leftist has never fucking got the position of fucking governor of a mayor in these fucking countries. If you're in California, you're automatically a leftist. No, these people fucking believe in capitalism. They still like capitalism. How are they leftist? What?
Main point. The social justice movements are predicted by what will give the college educated more work. There's a brilliant historian named Peter Turchin who created a computer model that's been able to predict when societies divide and fall into civil wars across history. The driving factors are wage stagnation with rising cost of living and inequality, which means there's more competition and desperation for fewer good jobs. This pressure means that societies are split among different factions that want more jobs and influence for people like them. Examples of this across history include the English Civil War, the fall of the Roman Republic.
Does he believe in civil wars coming up? That's very sussy.
Russian Revolution, and I could name like 20 more. However, it's exactly what's happening in the modern world today. In modern America, the divides between the college-educated left and the right, who is a coalition of non-college-educated groups like the military, church, and businessmen. You can predict social justice's actions based off what...
Oh, so you're talking about how the right controls all the systems in government right now because, you know, they control the military, they control the businesses, CEOs, bourgeois, so... Okay.
Gives people with college degrees more money and influence. Defund the police is giving influence to college-educated social workers over the police. The diplomacy emphasis is giving it to college-educated diplomats over the military.
So wait, are you saying that the right is giving left-wing people more money than the police? Source?
Regulation of businesses giving college-educated bureaucrats power over capitalists, and social justice theory as college professors having moral authority over traditional religion. From what we've seen so far and looking at their actions, social justice...
Traditional religion. He wants people to talk about creationism. He hates fucking evolution.
Isn't driven...
One of the things that pisses me off that people never understand is that people's real characters are shown by the actions, not the words that they say to justify them. If a man tells you he wants to fix your sink but steals your TV, he's really a thief. Somehow the left always gets to get away with failed projects and with destroying countries by saying their intentions were good. Source, please. Look, the intentions of the Spanish Inquisition and the witch trials were good. So why don't they somehow get a... What? But this guy's so dumb. He just puts out a question, but he never gives you the answer for it. That's what they always do. They always just keep it as broad as possible for you just to not think about it. Just don't think. Just listen to what I gotta say.
Primarily by a genuine desire to help the downtrodden, since their policies have been universally ineffective, but keep on being pushed for without question, since it's inside the self-interest of the college-educated classes. Social justice merely uses concern for oppressed groups as a way of creating policies that are good for them. Christianity's been the framework of Western civilization for the better part of 2,000 years. If you're a Westerner, most of your ideas on how the world works comes from Christianity, even with modern atheism making no sense without a Christian framework. As Christianity declined...
Source, please? Can I get a... Wait, not source, but can I get reasons of why atheism doesn't make sense without Christianity, please?
Influence, social justice largely took its place among the college-educated technocrat class mentioned before. In Christianity, Satan takes on the outwards appearance of good, while in substance being the exact opposite. This is the perfect description of social...
You can literally call that about anything. What?
Justice, which takes the main assumption of Christianity, that
Does capitalism pose itself as... You can say the same thing about literally anything.
Scapegoating others and treating them unfairly for things outside their control as represented...
I can say this video is like Satan because it's promoting itself as good.
...and the crucifixion is evil and pushes the veneer of that while in reality going for the opposite. The famous Swiss psychologist Carl Jung had a term called the shadow. The mask is the part of your personality that you want to show the world, while the shadow is what you hide and comes out when you're not in your zone or are a poorly integrated person.
This is what I hear, and I agree with that. Right-leaning people and conservatives, they don't know art. They don't understand it. They just don't know it. Why do you think when it comes to like music and stuff, they're never the ones that like push forward like new art? They never do it. They're the new wave of like music and like art is never comes from conservatives because they just don't understand it.
Social justice is a representation of the toxic elements in Christianity parading under Christian virtues. An example of this is cancel culture. Across history, scapegoating was a holy rite in which a group would scapegoat a violator of...
I like how I can't believe as left-leaning people we made conservatives get away with thinking that only left people use cancel culture. It's not true. Right-wing people have been using cancel culture forever. We can talk about McCarthyism. We can talk about how when what's his name, Colin Kaepernick took a knee on when the national anthem was playing. Trump actually got him fired. So, cancel culture. The right wing has been using cancel culture before the left wing has.
Of group norms,
and they're still using it to this day.
Mustered together around the shared sin of killing this person as a way of bringing the community together. The crucifixion was meant to show that that was wrong, and one's connection with morality and God was what was important rather than group politics. Social justice is the exact opposite, and it's driven by group mores in which not being able to keep up with the slightest new verdict about what words are...
Again, this is like, right-wingers don't know how to art. They don't know. Like, what is these drawings? What is this?
Appropriate or not will result in excommunication.
It's a McCarthyism that tries to destroy dissidents' lives to supposedly save the community.
Social justice is powered by canceling those who violate it, thus making the cancelers feel virtuous that they're more moral. However, since canceling is how one shows moral virtue, it creates a repetitive cycle of more and more insanity and cruelty as the main moral arm of the movement. This is a process of trying to one-up each other in antisocial behavior, which is referred to by the Christian philosopher René Girard as mimetic, and is how social justice is largely driven, by crowd psychology. An example of the shadow is that social justice takes up the heart of Christian philosophy, or the desire to help the downtrodden, with a complete lack of moral structure. The biggest problem with modern ideologies is they believe that the...
No, seriously, social justice never looks at how to be a good neighbor, an honorable boss, or search for the truth through any lens except for the political. That means if someone is fighting racism, being a dick to their parents, lying about history, or hyperinflating their currency is acceptable? What? No. What?
Ends justify the means, and thus completely lack a moral structure since everything is justified to reach their concrete material goals.
I mean, you're lying about history right now.
Social justice has no framework for what being a decent person is, and thus is why the rudest, most intolerant, and cruelest people are often social justice warriors.
I like this picture right here. I like it because if you actually watch the video, the reason why she's being mad, because I forget who she was talking about, this guy, another guy. One of the guy actually said like something really racist and really bad, and she got mad because of what that guy said. But she's the villain only because she looks like this.
Since it's a philosophy that creates a veneer of morality.
So this is revisionist history right here.
Which justifies the worst possible actions along the way. Social justice overemphasizes caring about if others are harmed at the expense of everything else. It throws out and even disrespects traditional Christian values like the search for the truth, humility...
Again, you talk about... Hold up.
Social justice overemphasizes caring about if others are harmed at the expense of everything else. It throws out and even
I mean, again, you guys are Christians. You always talk about think of the children shit, so you can't really talk.
Respects traditional Christian values like the search for the truth, humility, courage, and patience. Values
Okay, I'm gonna ask this. How is Christians, they're the ones that search for the truth whenever we have a new like scientific study, they're always the ones that go against it. I don't understand.
Any stable and happy society together. As a Stoic Christian, when I talk to a Buddhist...
Again, you know how long it took for we just start teach evolution in fucking schools because Christians just didn't want that to be there?
Transcendentalist, Muslim, or most atheists, I know that we share the same core values at heart. That's not the case with social justice, which actively goes against the values of a stable society.
Okay, 7 cardinal Christian values and SGW philosophy. Social justice believe that unbridled sex is a moral good in on itself and aims to be sex positive. Marriage and sexual norms are construction, not stabilizing. What? What the fuck is unbridled sex? No, it's just like people can do whatever they want. If they want to get married, good for them. If they don't, then don't. Don't force people to call them to not have sex whenever they want. Okay. Temperance or self-control. Social justice governments involves massive amounts of debt. When it's funny when California and all these liberal and left leaning, quote unquote left leaning states are the ones that are fucking giving the economy the most money out of everybody, and it's usually the Republican states that are actually contributing to the debt because they're not making that much money. How did charity? Social justice believes in this. Okay. Diligence. Social justice believes working hard is whiteness and oppressive. That's not true. It's only that one cringe thing that put up. Kindness. Social justice has no provisions for actual interpersonal kindness. If someone disagrees with you politically, you can scream at them and destroy their career. Again, he's just being so fucking vague when it comes to this shit. I use okay, never mind. Like he says shit like this, like politically, but again, when it comes to like someone talking about how gay people shouldn't exist and we should kill them all, and like someone can scream at them and say, and like the social justice person would like disagree with them, and it'll be like, oh, you're canceling me for having my views. Patience. Social justice demands massive changes to society right now, and with complete justice all the time now without recourse to reality. I mean, okay, that's not true, but okay. Humanity, social justice believes in self. They have complete moral truth, viewing anyone who disagrees with it. Do Christians not do this? I'm sorry. You know, people were fucking burning people and like fucking executing them for being like fucking blasphemous back in the day. And like literally in certain areas, if you're gay and you live like in a Christian household, your fucking parents would literally disown you just for being yourself.
From my study of history, I would say social justice is evil for a couple reasons. The first of which is that it shoots its own dissenters. Funny. The slightest difference in
yet Christianity is not evil. Okay.
Will result in excommunication.
Okay.
Which allows insane fanaticism and disconnect from reality to develop.
Christianity doesn't do that. Okay.
Secondly, they have no moral compass, which is evident in that their supporters will burn cities, make policies that don't work, and ruin people's careers over minor statements, but you never see the movement hold its own members accountable. Literal rebellions are described as peaceful protests. You'll never see a person in the social justice movement say their movement did something wrong, except not being radical enough.
Christian philosophy refers to Satan as the Lord of Lies. This is since, as the search for the truth is muddied, it means humans have no guiding principles and automatically degrade back to base, disgusting norms. If the truth is gone, then the malicious can spread lies that benefit them more easily.
This is effectively social justice's strategy of saying objective truth doesn't exist, so you can only believe in their truth, which means they control reality.
Or maybe you can, like, create your own truth, and then we can debate on it and see whose truth is actually better and which one who actually has thought about their truth more, instead of just being a pussy and just, you know, making a whole bullshit-ass video essay. I would love to debate this guy.
This is why they try to break down every barrier and scream at you when you disagree. A great example of this is that a group of professors once sent
he's screaming at everybody who disagrees with him in this video. So
of fraudulent studies to social justice journals that were purposely ridiculous, like saying white people should ceremonially wear chains to atone for slavery, or
no one likes that.
Mein Kampf, but replacing Jews with various oppressive groups, and they had all of them published in real journals. They actually won an award for a paper about how dogs humping in the park is a sign of rape culture. As I've said before, this movement has no morality.
It's probably way more nuanced than that. And I guarantee he was wrong. Let's see. Can we hear him again?
All of them published in real journals. They actually won.
I mean, you can publish anything in fucking real journals.
Award for a paper about how dogs humping in the park is a sign of rape culture. As I've said before, this movement has no morality and only cares about power.
Like Christianity is not.
Now this is the billion-dollar question.
And right.
How worried should we be about social justice, getting worse or seizing more power? Well, this is my answer. I don't think social justice will exist in 20 years. It's becoming so radical.
The police should no longer use force, and crime should be solved without almost entirely by long-term social programs. It depends on what social programs you want. If social programs is giving more money to education and stuff like that, yeah, that's pretty good, because I know education is definitely a way to deter crime. That black people should be given reparation payments for slavery. What's wrong with that, really? He hasn't really made an argument against it. that people should announce their gender identity publicly, while 99.9% of the population identifies with their presumed gender. What? People should announce their gender identity publicly, while 99.9% of the population still identifies with their presumed gender. He's just talking about how he believes he should misgender people. Gender or sex are entirely divisible, and there are at least 64 genders. It's not really true. Gender and sex are two different things, but they can be like, they are like, gender does work with sex sometimes. They're not totally like different, but they are like different things. Every element of society should have perfect gender and racial equality of outcome, ignoring the demographic of the occupational inputs and geographic regions involved. That every academic field, whether English, science, history, etc., should be primarily devoted to the studies of oppression and hearing oppressed voices. I mean, there's a difference, a diversity of opinion there. I don't know if he doesn't believe in that. As schools should teach that Western civilizations and the United States are inherently oppressive organizations. I mean, you can talk about the bad things about them, and they definitely have some oppressive shit in them. That 8-year-olds with no other political rights should be able to switch genders. Yeah, what's wrong with that? A lot of we talked to a lot of trans people. A lot of trans people knew that they were they didn't fit in their right gender when they were like very young, and you can give them hormone treatments. When you talk to like the doctors, you know, kids just automatically just say, "Oh, I'm this, I'm that," and like automatically they give them that. No, they talk to the doctors. They actually like, you know, are actually like very sure about that, and then they can do the hormone therapy when a man wants to transition to a woman, and it's very reversible, easily reversible. That obesity is society's fault for stigmatizing fat rather than medical issues. Or, I mean, see, that's the issue right here. Obesity is society's fault for stigmatizing the fat rather than medical issues. It's medical issues and capitalism the reason for that, okay? That hidden covert forces like racism, the patriarchy, etc., operate subconsciously, control society in practically every level. I mean, that's pretty true. Speech can physically harm people. Free speech harms my... Okay, speech can harm people. It can actually physically harm people. Hitler, I don't think Hitler ever fucking personally killed a Jewish person, but his speech led to the death of many Jewish people. If I'm right on that arguments that you are not racist, QED makes you a racist. That was the argument White Fragility, a best-selling book. Oh, that's not... I guarantee that's not true. Or maybe it is true, because the person who wrote that book, Rama D'Angelo, she is stupid. I think she was the one that made that Coke thing about like the white people and Coke thing. That was really, really bad. That one identity is more important in debates than one ideas. That's not true. Capitalism is an inherently racist and oppressive organization that brings harm to minorities. True! That is true. Capitalism is that. That's one identity is more important to debates than one ideas. You think that's modern left-wing positions? I feel like that was a right-wing position at one point too. You can argue that these are good and moral positions, but you can't argue that by the standards of 10 years ago, these are markedly radical positions. I mean, they are really radical. They are. Also, these aren't minority opinions. Influential sites like CNN and type believe them.
Radical and disliked at such a fast speed, and it's so untethered from general public opinion that there's
fucking White Fragility 13 is not a public opinion. It's popular opinion. It's not. Straight up not.
Estimates put the social justice cadre at between 6 to 20% of American population, and we're definitely already seeing a backlash.
Huh.
My worry, however, is that the backlash will be something even worse than social justice. If an entire generation of young men grow up listening to insane feminism, the next generation of leadership might push too far in the other direction and become deeply misogynistic, for example. Industrialized populations, when pushed too far, tend to go to right-wing authoritarianism. Much of social justice is nasty, but it's too...
Obviously, the one on the left is way more dangerous than a bunch... Wait, what? Are you telling me that these two... This is the real question, that a bunch of kids just with their fists pumped up in the air, just protesting peacefully, is as dangerous as a bunch of people with fucking guns? Okay.
too disconnected from reality to be really dangerous, which is not the case for the authoritarian right. It's our responsibility.
They're only as dangerous because this guy believes that just because there are a lot more people of color over here, they're as dangerous as people with guns.
To make sure whatever backlash happens to social justice remains honorable and keeps the downtrodden from being hurt. The problem is that social justice will continue to get more radical, as it has been doing at faster and faster speeds, largely because their whole moral compass is built off showing themselves to be morally superior. I'm not sure where they'll go next. I'm already surprised at how far they've gotten now, to be honest. Similarly, if the recession that me and a lot of other people think are predicting will come, it will further worsen standards of living, which will make social justice even worse. In summary, expect this movement to get worse until it inevitably...
Do you think that's a problem with social justice, or you think that's a problem with the current economic status that we're in, that was made by capitalism?
burns out due to its own ridiculousness, and then people will scramble to hide that they had ever had their pronouns in their social media. However, a big question is how many necessary traditions social justice will eat before...
Wait, what do you say?
...due to its own even worse. In summary, expect this movement to get worse until it inevitably burns out due to its own ridiculousness, and then people will scramble to hide that they had ever had their pronouns in their social media. However,
what's wrong with having pronouns in social media? It's literally not hurting anybody.
The question is how many necessary traditions social justice will eat before it dies. Like communism, social justice never builds anything effective, but tries to rip apart social cohesion for more power.
Social justice doesn't even have a theory of constructing everything, with their entire worldview built upon taking from pre-existing successful organisms. Another very important thing to consider is that for a civilization to die, only the elite needs to be wiped out or become complicit in the civilization's death. And a major problem here is that these
It is just saying that you can't harm the elite. The elite is the end all and be all of a society. I can't believe. And he said he was pro-worker.
Ideologues control the groups and systems that create much of our leadership class, or the top universities.
The way you deal with social justice is to not surrender to them out of cowardness. They will merely install more ideologues if given the ability to do so, and will immediately push for more concessions. If you run a company, don't let diversity coordinators show up, since they don't have an incentive to solve racial problems, which would end their job.
Yeah, just have only white people in your company. Yeah.
Only to effectively become commissars for their ideology in your organization. The way to fight social justice is to stand for good values. Stand behind things an 11-year-old could realize were true, like common human politeness, the truth, and honor. Like some horrifying Star Trek monster, social justice only gains power from our fear of it.
Otherwise, as
you have to think like an 11-year-old? Okay.
We've seen with Chaz, it's just a movement run by people who can't organize themselves, can't feed themselves, and aren't very well armed.
What a faultist, and thanks for watching.
They're not very well armed. Hold up. Is that a threat? Okay.
If you enjoyed that video, please like, comment, subscribe, or stay tuned for...
This video was insane. I understand why Vosh and Xanderhall was saying this video was fucking one of the craziest videos that they ever... about like social justice. It was insane. A lot of the shit that he said was wrong. Most of it, about 99% of it was wrong. And shit, man, this rhetoric was so bad. It sounds like he wanted another civil war. He wants violence. And he's definitely a racist asshole. He's definitely 100%. But as we've gone in here, and as I told you, like, reactionaries are, like, super bad, man. We definitely need to get, like, their mindset, like, out of here, dog. Like, for real. And he does not... I would love to debate him. I would. So, yeah. That's pretty much it. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Don't subscribe to this asshole. He has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Please subscribe to me. I very much appreciate it. And, I'm out. Peace.